I never imagined my peaceful afternoon would spiral into chaos over an emotional support peacock. But as I faced Karen's outrageous demands, I realized entitlement knows no bounds, especially in my own backyard. You could say I had officially entered the Twilight Zone. There was Karen, sprawled out like a beached whale in that eye-wateringly neon floral bikini, totally at ease amidst the irritatingly cheerful bubble of her picnic. I blinked, half expecting her to vanish in a puff of smoke, or for Rod Serling to appear and narrate the absurdity unfolding before my eyes. Instead, the only real thing was that Peacock, strutting around like it owned the place. Perhaps it did, considering how much of my sanity Karen was commandeering. I mean, who in their right mind brings a literal peacock as an emotional support animal? What's next? A pet rhinoceros at the grocery store? Karen waved a slice of brie at me, her flabby arm flapping in a gesture that could only be interpreted as an invitation for a poolside party. I shuddered at the thought, my inner monologue sounding the alarm. Nah, it's a hard pass for me. Ethan, you have to understand, she began, like I was the one who desperately needed a life coach. Bartholomew here helps me cope with negativity. She gestured grandly at the peacock, who seemed utterly bored by her antics, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes. This was rich. Karen's personal drama was open for business, while I was just trying to chill by my own pool. And what was with that name? Bartholomew? It was a peacock, not a member of the British aristocracy. Just who did she think she was? The audacity of it all threatened to send me over the edge into a fit of hysterics if it didn't drown me first. I had half a mind to suggest she name it Trouble, because that's exactly what this situation was. Then, as if in a divine burst of inspiration, I remembered my good buddy Max next door. Ah, sweet, sweet Max. Always sporting those loud Hawaiian shirts, and a grin that could disarm a hungry rhinoceros. He'd just got back from a surf trip. I could already picture his reaction to the bizarre scene unfolding in my backyard. So, in a stroke of logical reasoning tinged with dramatic desperation, I lunged for my phone. As I dialed Max's number, I felt like I was calling for backup in a war against Karen's antics. "Dude," I exclaimed when Max picked up, "get over here. You won't believe what's happening." Max arrived a short moment later, sporting a flamingo print Hawaiian shirt that had likely blindsided any onlooking birds. Just as I was about to share the tale of glorious ridiculousness waiting for him out back, he stopped mid-sentence, eyes wide open, as he caught sight of Karen and Bartholomew, the dynamic duo of chaos. "Ethan, is that a peacock? Is she in your pool?" he shouted, a blend of disbelief and amusement clear in his tone. "What do you expect? She has emotional support peacocks now," I responded, throwing my hands up in flamboyant exasperation, hardly able to grasp just how ludicrous the entire situation had spiraled into. I could feel my own sanity flickering like one of those cheap pool lights. Max chuckled, leaning over the fence that separated our backyards, incredulous. "Well, you know what they say about entitlement. It often struts right into other people's spaces." He grinned, clearly relishing the absurdity of the moment, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. Laughter was the best medicine in the face of utter absurdity, and I was now beginning to appreciate the sheer comedic genius of Karen's antics. "Are you going to confront her?" Max suggested, his mischievous nature bubbling to the surface. "Or should I just start filming for TikTok?" My initial panic began to dissolve into a sense of camaraderie. Perhaps it was time for me to reclaim my territory like a noble knight upon his steed, except my lance would be a phone call to animal control. With a conspiratorial grin lighting up my face, I turned my attention to the obnoxious picnic spread out before Karen, ticking off all the entitlements one might consider for such an event. "Oh, we're doing this," I said dramatically, buoyed by Max's laughter. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the incredible show where unsuspecting homeowners call animal control on emotional support peacocks." Grabbing my phone, I dialed the number for animal control and felt a spark of exhilaration racing through me. I was about to unleash a wave of justice upon Karen's self-proclaimed sovereignty. She had claimed my peaceful slice of paradise for too long. As the phone rang and the calm monotone of the dispatcher answered, I felt like I was on the brink of destiny. The sun was shining, a slight breeze kissed my cheeks, and the anticipation built up around me in palpable waves. Max grinned like the Cheshire Cat, both horrified and mildly hypnotized by the unfolding drama. "You're telling me your neighbor is lounging in your pool with a peacock, and you're calling animal control?" The dispatcher's incredulous voice echoed back, and I half expected a laugh on the other end. But no matter, the wheels were already in motion. With a fresh sense of resolve, I smiled at Max, feeling ready to tackle this Karen-sized problem right at its ludicrous roots. Who could ever question my next logical move now? The stage was set for a showdown, and I could hardly contain my joy as I prepared for whatever absurdity would come my way next. Would animal control believe my tale, or was I the main character in Karen's newest drama? As I listened to the dispatcher's voice, my heart raced with both excitement and trepidation. Yes, you heard me right. There's an emotional support peacock draped over my pool floaty, like it owns the place. I could practically picture the dispatcher's brow furrowing in disbelief on the other end. But this was not just any peacock. It was Karen's peacock, the infamous Bartholomew. The absurdity of it all was not lost on me, and here I was, a regular guy with a penchant for relaxation, suddenly thrust into a comical standoff over my own backyard. Why on earth had I thought having a pool would be a good idea? Max leaned against the fence, chuckling so hard I was worried he might topple over. "Ethan, you have officially become the hero of a sitcom no one asked for. What happens next? Do you get to beat her at a pool noodle duel?" His playful banter did little to lighten my own bubbling frustration. Sure, there was humor in the situation, but at that moment I was less interested in becoming a funny meme and more focused on reclaiming my territory. If by duel you mean I call animal control faster than she can explain her compelling need for Bartholomew, then yes, I shot back, trying to maintain focus as the dispatcher continued to process my ridiculous claim. To add fuel to the fire, I heard a faint squawking behind me. I turned just in time to see Bartholomew strutting closer, his iridescent feathers flashing in the sunlight like a peacock-sized disco ball. Oh great, now the drama king himself is coming for reinforcements, I thought, shifting my stance as if preparing for an uninvited wrestling match. Meanwhile, the dispatcher's voice broke through my humorous distraction. "And can you confirm the address, sir?" I quickly rattled off my address, trying to conceal my burgeoning giggles as I imagined an animal control van rolling up, sirens blaring, to save the day from an overly entitled woman and her avian accomplice. Max, ever the comic genius, added fuel to the fire. "I think you should wear a cape while waiting for them. The neighborhood needs a hero, and a superhero deserves flair." He gestured dramatically, and under different circumstances, I might have laughed. But right now, all I wanted was peace and quiet. If anyone comes dressed like a superhero, it'll be Karen, claiming validation through her peacock persuasion, I quipped, earning yet another belly laugh from Max. As if on cue, Karen suddenly burst back into my vision, shoving aside her picnic remnants with an ungraceful thud. Sporting her caphorific ensemble, she squinted fiercely at me, the fiery indignation rolling off her in waves. "Ethan, how dare you invade my safe space with your negativity?" I could barely stifle a guffaw at her dare in demanding my attention as she brandished a grape in a way I could only imagine was meant to be threatening. Was she seriously using fruit as a weapon? It was ludicrous enough to make me rethink my lunch choices. "I'm not invading anything, Karen. This is my space, and Bartholomew can't just float around here like he's on a tropical vacation all by himself." With that, I felt that unmistakable surge of confidence I'd been trying to channel in this ridiculous standoff. The beast within, a fervor to reclaim my tranquil solitude through all the natural absurdity surrounding me, surged with an almost comical fierceness. Max shot me a supportive thumbs up, and in that moment we both knew that while Karen might be out of her mind, I wasn't going to back down. As I hung up the phone after confirming that, yes, animal control was indeed on the way, a thoroughly theatrical gasp erupted from Karen. "You called the authorities? For my emotional support peacock?" she shrieked, eyes wide as if I had declared a nuclear war on her sensitive soul. "Oh baby, that's a big no-no." I could hear the displeasure about to unfurl, but honestly, not even the Great Gatsby's most flamboyant party would prepare me for her reaction. "I mean, if you're here for some sort of Peacock Olympics, I didn't sign up for that." "Is this a joke to you?" Karen scoffed, Bartholomew is a certified life coach. Just look at him. He's practically a feather on the wind of wisdom. I fought back another eye roll, ready to respond with something equally hilarious when Max piped in. And how's that working out for you, Karen? Because right now, it looks like you're about to lose a battle against a flock of logic and a humble human trying to swim. Our laughter filled the air like a balloon of joy ready to pop, tipping the scales back towards sanity amidst the madness. And so we stood there, a trio of characters, in an unfolding bizarre story in my backyard, poised for the ridiculousness that awaited us. With animal control on the way, I prepared myself mentally for whatever was going to make its appearance. What a peculiar clash of egos and absurd behaviors. Would I emerge triumphant over Karen's kooky entitlement, or was I just another pawn in her grand scheme of emotional confusion? The answer awaited me like the next scene in a slapstick comedy, and I felt a peculiar thrill as I realized, once again, the absurdity of life was my chosen adventure. A strange tranquility fell over the scene as Bartholomew strutted toward me, undeterred by the brewing conflict. The avian mischief-maker looked entirely too proud, as if he were not just a peacock, but rather the curator of a grand scheme for world dominance. I shook my head at the ludicrousness of it all. Was it the peacock that had sent Karen into this tizzy? Or was it the sheer audacity of me, Ethan Turner, trying to reclaim my backyard from this feathered menace? My heart wavered between laughter and disbelief as I absorbed the sight of Karen puffing herself up like a blowfish, desperately asserting her authority with the most menacing grape I'd ever seen. Karen, are you planning a fruit salad showdown here? I muttered to myself, stirring even more hilarity within. Max leaned closer to me, brimming with laughter, eyebrows dancing like they were auditioning for a comedy. Honestly, I'm surprised you didn't start a GoFundMe to cover therapy for Bartholomew. His voice was teasing, but I appreciated the levity. Oh, great! Next, she's going to claim that the peacock's emotional support is compromised, and I'll be the bad neighbor who's chasing off her therapy bird. I was definitely caught in a ridiculous fever pitch. A fight I didn't want but could hardly resist. And just when I thought it couldn't possibly get weirder, I heard sirens in the distance. Animal control was close. My heart raced as anticipation washed over me. I had an audience now, and the showdown was about to escalate dramatically. Karen's eyes darted nervously at the sound, narrowing with a mix of fear and fury, as if they had caught wind of an impending apocalypse. You call the authorities on my support system? And this is what you do? She exclaimed, her voice swirling with theatrics. What about my emotional well-being, huh? I could only roll my eyes. Her conflation of a peacock with emotional safety felt like a scene out of a comedy special. The uproar over the whole scenario sent my senses into overdrive. But just as I stood firm, reveling in the absurdity, I sensed a shift in the atmosphere as the animal control vehicle rumbled down the street, emblazoned with a cartoonish raccoon emblazoned across its side. A burly officer in faded cargo shorts and a safety orange polo stepped out, a dignified glare hovering on his face. So let me get this straight, he said, walking toward us with an air of authority that momentarily stunned Karen. You've got a peacock having a pool party on your property? I thought about how ludicrous this must sound to anyone else not privy to my personal drama. Yes, sir. It's true, I admitted, waving at Bartholomew as he exploited his platform on my floaty, doing his best party trick. And here I am, just a man trying to enjoy a quiet day by the pool. It's much harder with a preening peacock taking aesthetic selfies. I tried my best to sound serious, but I couldn't hide the grin spreading across my face. Karen chimed in, panic in her voice. Ethan is just jealous. Bartholomew is my therapy peacock, and he needs to be here. This was the climax. Both of us, apparently, defending our absurd territories. But the officer, oblivious to the scope of our melodramatic battle, turned his attention toward Barbara and took a step closer. Ma'am, he declared, I'm going to need to see some documentation regarding this emotional support animal. A sort of victory spread across my face. I could visualize Karen scrambling for whatever flimsy proof she would conjure up that wouldn't hold a feather to the ensuing chaos. Karen halted for the briefest moment, her lips pursing like she'd just tasted a sour lemon. Documentation? She squawked, eyes wide. That's preposterous. You can't question my right to emotional support. I snickered lightly, caught up in a mix of vindication and humor. The officer's brows raised, humor flickering in his eyes as he glanced at me. This sounds like an unusual case, he said, chuckling slightly, but I take my job seriously. Sir, do you want to press charges? I pondered for a quick second before reluctantly shaking my head. While the deranged saga was amusing now, I couldn't fathom a life graced by court dates and perpetual enmity with my eccentric neighbor. Just as I was about to mumble something about peace, Bartholomew decided to take a brave leap from the float, landing right on the officer's shoulder. His feathers fanned like a confetti explosion. The officer's eyes went wide, and in that moment of utter chaos, I burst into laughter. "Well, this is new," he remarked, raising a brow at the preening creature, now claiming his shoulder as its throne. "So we're taking party crashers now?" I have to admit, that's a new addition to my job. Meanwhile, Karen had completely lost control, shrieking in disbelief. "You see? He loves me. He doesn't want to leave." I could barely contain myself. Just past her theatrical performance, I glimpsed Max doubled over, laughing so hard I feared he might need a lifeguard. As the absurdity unfolded, I realized my backyard drama had evolved into theater of the absurd, with Bartholomew as our lead performer. "All right, I'm going to need you both to calm down." The officer chuckled as Bartholomew attempted to nuzzle his face. I glanced at Max, who was clearly thinking the same thing. Well, this is a sitcom we'll remember. With animal control now involved, could we even hope for anything resembling normal? As the banter flowed and laughter erupted, I felt myself realizing that maybe, just maybe, the absurdity around me didn't need to be defeated. Perhaps it could be embraced. But what hilarity awaited as we progressed? The showdown over my pool was just the beginning. The moment Bartholomew perched on the officer's shoulder, it felt as if time slowed, the universe aligning in a ridiculous dance of comedy. The officer, who had clearly expected to handle some mundane animal control matter, suddenly found himself in the midst of an all-out avian debacle. I could see his mind racing, calculating whether he had signed up for a reality TV show or a wild zoo escape. The peacock, now the center of everyone's attention, fluffed his feathers, probably pondering his next move like a feathered Sherlock Holmes caught in a bizarre caper. I chuckled to Max. What's the protocol for handling a support peacock crashing an officer's shoulder? Is there a handbook for this? Karen, however, was not ready to let this humorous turn of events derail her grandiose ideas. "You don't understand. Bartholomew is a certified emotional support animal," she squawked, throwing her hands in the air like a conductor leading an orchestra. But really it was more like she was trying to communicate with a horde of pigeons, desperately waving off the absurdity surrounding her. "He's my whole life. How can you treat him like this?" Her words danced in a tense tango with the raucous laughter spilling from Max and me, as the officer radioed in for backup to tackle this peacock predicament. I imagined a team of rogue animal control agents rushing to my rescue, complete with security badges and an emergency peacock extraction plan. The officer, with a bemused smirk tugging at the corners of his lips, finally managed to reply. "Ma'am, I can assure you that emotional support peacocks are a bit outside our regulations, so—" The dramatic pause felt like thunder before a storm, feeding Karen's anxiety. Her eyes widened, shifting from bewilderment to indignation. "What do you mean, outside regulations? You cannot put a price on mental health," she gasped, clearly oblivious to the irony of the situation. Meanwhile, I was practically guffawing, clutching my sides as Bartholomew casually fluffed against his new friend's neck, preening like he was auditioning for a reality show about glamorous pets and their overly dramatic owners. Max, who had turned into my partner in laughter, leaned closer, nudging me. "Dude, I didn't realize we were living in an avant-garde drama. When does Bartholomew get his monologue?" His deadpan delivery was the cherry on top of this chaotic Sunday we had found ourselves in. I had to admit, even I didn't know how life turned into this sort of theatrical absurdity, where shouting about mental health met a peacock pressing against the shoulder of an official. Including the grape fiasco, it felt like the perfect comedy skit, a blend of slapstick and irony that could survive in any sitcom universe. The thought of Bartholomew winning an Oscar for Best Supporting Animal crossed my mind as I watched the feathered fool bask in all the attention. "Okay, let's settle down," the officer insisted, now adopting a position of comforting authority, half amused, half exasperated. I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie toward him. Clearly, he had entered a realm far outside of the routine pet rescue and was now embroiled in the wildest carnivalesque spectacle imaginable. With great dexterity, he attempted to persuade Karen to either retrieve the required documentation or reconsider her choices. The glimpse of hesitation in her eyes was promising. Perhaps reality was creeping in. "Listen, if I can get my cat on this emotional support list, I'm pretty sure Bartholomew could qualify. But can we at least pursue a solution that doesn't involve turning my backyard into an avian circus?" His final plea was said with a genuine smile, successfully puncturing the tension with a comic flourish. "Are you trying to talk sense into me?" Karen sputtered indignantly, puffing up with all the fight she could muster. "Bartholomew has rights." She waved a finger around like it was a tiny baton rallying the crowd. "And you can't just dismiss him because he's a peacock. I demand you respect his presence." The officer exhaled, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I could only imagine the thoughts racing through his head. Somewhere, there had to be an animal control manual stating, "In case of entitlement, redirect politely and bring snacks." I glanced at Bartholomew, who was now eyeing the officer's badge like it was a shiny new toy, wondering if he could claim it as his latest accessory. As the situation unfolded like a scene from a sitcom, I knew I had to intervene, if only to wrap up the absurdity. "Karen, how about we compromise?" I stepped forward, doing my best to project confidence while internally navigating the oscillating waves of disbelief and hilarity. "I'll happily let Bartholomew roam, as long as someone attends poolside etiquette classes first. Trust me, it's the least you can do with this poolside mayhem." I flashed her the most earnest grin I could muster. "Let's avoid a repeat performance of today's drama, yeah? I could use a peaceful weekend." The tension in the air shifted minutely, and for a moment I caught a hint of a flustered smile from the mysteriously fierce Karen. Yes, I thought, taking back my backyard was entirely possible, and just then, could this wild star-crossed saga be leading us all somewhere new? As Karen's eyes narrowed, I couldn't help but wonder just how far her entitled stubbornness could stretch. The glint of her floral blouse was striking against the backdrop of my now unoccupied pool, much like a rainbow clashing against a stormy sky. Would she negotiate like a seasoned diplomat? Or was this the moment she would declare war by rallying her peacock's force, waving feathers and flailing her hands as if directing a lost military brigade? "Ethan, sweetie," she began, her voice dripping with faux sweetness that only a seasoned drama queen could muster. "You can't just shove Bartholomew aside like he's yesterday's news," she spat, tossing her hair back in theatrical distress. It wouldn't surprise me if she called one of her former clients to launch a Twitter campaign in his favor, emphasizing the triumph of emotional support animals over poolside sanity. Max, standing beside me, could hardly restrain his amusement, leaning closer to whisper, "Dude, the only place this drama could reach the next level would be a courtroom scene complete with a jury of confused squirrels." This absurdity, wonderfully infused with Max's typical levity, grounded me as I wrestled with the very real possibility that I needed to dial back my expectations of how this fiasco could end. Maybe I should take a page out of Karen's overzealous playbook and get a little more animated myself. "You know what, Karen?" I started, summoning my inner tough guy while still trying to suppress the urge to chuckle. "Bartholomew might be vying for the Best Supporting Actor award, but he's got to learn that poolside dives aren't exactly on his resume." This resulted in surreptitious snickers bubbling from Max, as Karen proceeded to steadily ramp up her arguments in a desperate bid to secure Bartholomew's rights, like they were a permanent pool pass. "Rights?" she retorted, hands flailing once more like an overzealous traffic cop. "Let's not forget who's been tirelessly promoting the emotional wellness scene. I'm practically the face of it, and Bartholomew is my feathered testament." She really knew how to twist the narrative to fit her melodrama. And honestly, I was starting to feel more like a character in a soap opera, rather than simply a guy trying to enjoy his weekend. I suspected this was the precise moment unforeseen plot twists were unleashed, Why not throw in a talent show while she was at it? And if you think you can cruelly deny him access to an environment tailored for wellness, you're sorely mistaken. Her voice crescendoed like a ballad, calling forth the ghosts of entitled patrons somewhere far away amid that gust of wind. Okay, how about we get back to some semblance of reality here? The officer interjected, seemingly regaining some control over the swirling chaos. I understand how important emotional support can be, but we still have to adhere to the rules. I can't simply allow a peacock to use your pool as a spa day just because it's healthy for its, emotions. He raised an eyebrow at Karen, and for a brief moment she looked almost human, caught in the gears of reason, albeit weakly attempting to rally her thoughts together. Meanwhile, I could hear the gears in my head clicking into place as I suddenly realized I could turn this wild situation into my very own messy resolution with a sprinkle of peace. Taking a deep breath, I did my best to uphold my newfound assertiveness. All right, Karen, here's what I propose, I declared, aiming for revival as confidence bubbled up inside me. You leave Bartholomew's future poolsides up to the professionals, and I promise I won't dive headfirst into a neighborhood group chat to let everyone know about today's drama. I gave her a sly grin, feeling perhaps that I had managed to flip the power dynamic ever so slightly. For fun, let's agree on the day of Bartholomew, where we publicly endorse his support while he resides in a well-earned sanctuary. Perhaps a little more, shall we say, fit for his kind. The air tightened as if everyone anticipated a dramatic outburst, yet the possibilities hung like ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. As Karen's expression wavered between disbelief and reluctant contemplation, I could practically see her mind whirring with calculations on how to save face while also holding firm to her supposed dominance over the emotional support world. So, I get a neighborhood day to promote Bartholomew? She asked slowly, almost incredulously, brow furrowed in deep thought. Fine, as long as it's clear he deserves his moment. But you better believe I'll be taking any appropriate photos for my social media, she added, nudging her glasses up like a mighty general preparing for a photo shoot. The atmosphere lightened, and I could almost hear the chorus of relaxation enveloping the space around us as the officers glanced at one another, suffocated under the weight of this moral dilemma. Perfect. Let's set some guidelines. Maybe even enroll in some community courses, eh? I gleefully added, feeling entirely liberated from the tension that had entrapped my backyard, basking in optimism for what lay ahead. After everything, perhaps this dramatic escapade with Karen, her peacock, and the potential comedy of this entire spectacle had turned out to be a catalyst for a new friendship, things I never imagined. As the officers pulled out a notepad to take down my last suggestion, I smiled and nudged Max, whispering, "Can you imagine the neighborhood buzz when the great Bartholomew poolside day takes off?" I could practically see every neighbor pouring in to celebrate the magnificent presence of a peacock mingling with pool floaties, a day destined for future gossip and tales of hilarity. Life is indeed unpredictable, and sometimes even the wildest entitlements can turn into a memory worth sharing, filled with unintended hilarity and a sprinkle of unexpected camaraderie. Would this bizarre occurrence ultimately rewrite the dynamic between me and Karen? Only time would tell, but the laughter and surreal exchange that day were bound to echo in my mind for quite some time.